Für viele Jugendliche ist Politik nicht spannend genug, die EU eher ein abstraktes Gebilde. Ganz sicher liegt es auch daran, dass sie nicht genau wissen, was Europa mit ihrem Leben zu tun hat. Doch Politik muss nicht langweilig sein. Das erleben zurzeit auch die 300 Jugendlichen beim Europäischen Jugendparlament in Stockholm. Dort debattieren sie wie im richtigen Europäischen Parlament über all die Themen, die für Europa wichtig sind.
Internationally, the European Youth Parliament is a well-known organization. Many value this network thanks to its nature of creating great environments for self-growth and social interaction. For the last 25 years, a dedicated group of people has been successfully maintaining an organization that inspires many youngsters all throughout Sweden to become better versions of themselves. To a lot of people, spending as much of their free time as these individuals did on a project like this would be unthinkable. Truth is, some thought it was worth it. This is the story of those that decided to go further. This is the story of those that work behind the scenes. It all started in the city of Gothenburg. Here, a seed was planted. The idea of bringing this debate-based network to Sweden was a dream for some, and even though there isn't a lot of information online about what exactly happened, the 18th ever international session of the network took place in Sweden. After 6 years of silence, the network came back to Sweden. The 36th international session of the network was held in Stockholm in 2001. But only 2 years later, in 2003, Frederick Lee Olsen founded an alumni organization. The old seed was sprouting at this time, and in 2005, UIP Sweden finally organized their first national selection conference back in Gothenburg. This event has barely any information available online. Between 2005 and 2007, the organization went through hard times. The major struggle they faced at this period was to get a stable funding and economy. Maintaining the national sessions and building visions for them required a lot of effort from all the people involved, and it was difficult for these board members to focus on other things in their organization. Previously, they had been supported by a state educational fund, but as the organization wasn't purely educational, this funding was cut. At this point, they set up a goal to be able to get another state grant meant for youth organizations. There were obstacles though. The fund they were preparing to apply for had a quantitative threshold of 1,000 active members per year that had to reconfirm that they were active every single year. This made it so it was very hard for UIP Sweden to get the funding. Only 2 years later, in 2009, they finally managed to reach the required number of members and they started receiving state funding. It was the perfect timing, as thanks to a lot of effort from the members of the organization, UIP Sweden hosted their third international session inside the country. This event proved to be a success.
Die schwedische Kronprinzessin Victoria fühlte sich sichtlich wohl zwischen den europäischen Jugendlichen. Sie hatte es sich nicht nehmen lassen, das Europäische Jugendparlament am Abend persönlich zu eröffnen. Ich bin begeistert, junge Menschen zu erleben, die so wichtige europäische und globale Themen diskutieren, über Umwelt, Handel und Außenpolitik. Fast 300 Jugendliche empfängt sie und die haben schon den ganzen Tag etwas getan, was viele in ihrem Alter langweilig finden. Sie haben Politik gemacht, wie im Europäischen Parlament.
The people participated were very happy with the session. And everything from having the royal, like the crown princess as the kind of protector of the session, and having, there were just so many things that I think were done so well. I think that also probably made people want to also take part in the organization on the national board side, because since we could be so proud of the session, that I think that also kept people a lot of really ambitious and very talented people to keep them in the organization because of this session, I think.
Even with the success of the 2009 Stockholm IS and the consistency at organizing the flagship national session every year, UIP Sweden was still struggling.
But again, fundraising, it's sometimes a little bit sad when we go look for money and people know it's a worthy cause. It's it's a non-profit organization we run, and still that it's a bit difficult to raise funds for such things. But I guess that's part of reality.
Before the events actually happened, it was always uncertain if they were going to ensure all the means to have them running smoothly.
So whereas before, fundraising was almost entirely done on a personal level for the head organizers, you could see the session quality vary a lot depending on, how good is someone at fundraising, how many contacts do they know, and, what are their relatives? Like, are they able to gather good connections, whatever?
This, together with the dream of doing more than just one major event per year, resulted in the idea to apply to a much bigger state grant. With this new revised plan for the fundraising group of the organization, a new era of UIP Sweden began. Although this fund would definitely grant UIP Sweden a lot of economic stability, it would also bring a lot of issues. There were two main challenges for the application to this grant. The first one was an already known one. UIP Sweden needed to have 1,000 registered members every year. This was hard to obtain, but they were consistent with this during previous years, as they needed it for the previous fund. The other obstacle for their eligibility for the fund was that they needed to be an organization that was active nationwide. It was at this point that they decided to create regional boards.
Well, the local boards was kind of a requirement to be able to get this kind of grant from the government, because the government grant is for national voluntary organizations for use.
We established these regional boards, and we also had one in Uppsala to make sure that we had 5 different regions that we were active in. So it's East, West, North, South, and Uppsala, as well as the national board then. And essentially this was purely a way for us to actually be eligible for funding.
Except, the impact of these regional boards would later prove to be much bigger than only the guarantee for eligibility for the state grant.
People started thinking, how can we bring more added value to the sessions? How can we make sure that the regional boards have something to do and aren't just, there on paper? So the regional boards started having things like pre and post session meetups where they could explain, other ways of getting engaged or just talk a bit and getting friends and network. And then we saw other sort of growths of how can we make this have more added value for the participants. So things like UIP ambassadors started popping up, where we had individual people who were really into UIP could represent UIP at their school, recruit more people for sessions, but then also have other activities where they could have little workshops in their school if they wanted to, etc.
With the existence of regional boards, the people coordinating them started taking initiative. Starting in 2012, a lot of things changed throughout the organization.
One quite big change that came from this as well was how we selected the students and the schools from attending the session. When I started in 2008, the joining schools were, I think that any school that wanted to take part in a national selection could, for the first kind of selection process, which consisted of writing an essay. So students from different schools would write an essay, and schools with the best essays would be chosen, and those people from those schools with the best essays were chosen to attend, and they attended the national selection directly.
With the start of the local boards and with the help of a bigger state grant, UIP Sweden was finally capable of organizing its first round of regional selection conferences. For the first time in Sweden, more schools were able to participate in multiple different events in all the different regions of the country.
Starting in 2012 with the first regional sessions, we shifted the focus on having these regional selection processes in 3 or 4 places in Sweden, and then having them then go to the national selection process.
More than this, the organization's outreach was blooming. They started reaching more schools all around the country.
We got the regional board in the north, in a geographically more remote region of the country, which has longer communication links to other parts, to the south of the country, where most of the work is concentrated. So seeing a rise in the work in the northern parts of the country was in 2013-14 was, I think, a big boost as well to our member base for the sake of geographical diversity.
With the regional boards, they were indeed eligible for the state grant. The issues it brought weren't solved though. Working on such a complicated grant was making the work of the organization extremely difficult.
More than anything else, it created a lot of work, a lot of accounting, a lot of reporting on what the money is used for and where the money isn't going. And I think that I guess is one of the biggest misconceptions I had to sort of say discuss with people, that there's a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of issues that come with getting these kind of government grants as well. And it's an issue because it wasn't just that they were given to us every year. We had to apply for them on a yearly basis, which was also took months of work.
They had no time to create visions for the events and for the future of UIP Sweden. Between 2012 and 2014, since this was their main struggle, they decided that it was a good time to hire a general secretary, someone that could be in charge of the bureaucracy, while the board was able to build their work and start designing their own views on what the organization should become. At this moment, the whole mentality of the organization started shifting. They had finally guaranteed that they were economically stable, and they also had enough time to plan better for the future.
And working then also with a general secretary who took on a lot of the administrative role that the national board might otherwise have to take on. It gave this space for a national board to look not at the daily operations of how to run the organization, what was happening in the very large country that we have, because a lot of the operative daily working, weekly working happening in the regional boards and the admin office stuff happening from the general secretary side. It gave this space, this breathing room for the national board to think ahead, to look ahead, to look more strategically as opposed to operatively as we had been working before. It was a lot, not crisis management, but it was a lot of management rather on a short-term basis than a long-term basis. So with this shift which happened then during the mandate of 14-15, when I was most active when I was active on the national board, that's when we had the general secretary was appointed. And we put in place or proposed at the annual meeting 2015 to have a 4-year national plan, or to have a 4-year strategy of the direction where we wanted to go, where we were heading, more visionary. So what kind of organization do we want to be?
In that same annual meeting back in 2015, this 4-year plan was approved. And for the most recent years of the organization, it has been extremely impactful.
I think this marks a big shift in no longer seeing UIP as the purpose of our organization, as in like the sessions, but rather seeing these sessions as a tool to fulfill our purpose. And I think that's really a sign of the organization having matured a lot. Whereas before it was just people have experienced UIP, they want to do the same thing. The organization grew. We established goals, aims, values of our own that of course are then also in line with the values of UIP International. But then we saw there are other ways that we can fulfill these goals as well. So we started working more towards filling them in other ways. Now that's not to say that sessions are no longer the main thing about UIP Sweden. Of course they are, but it's very interesting to see that we've grown out of that being the sole center of our identity, and we have other things going for us now as well. And I think that's very cool.
When in 2016 the organization was faced with the opportunity to organize the Spring 2018 international session inside Sweden, they rushedly decided to do so.
Yeah, we had a lot of members for a very long time sort of saying that we want to have another IS in Sweden, and we thought there was like a very strong, genuine interest in ISs, but as we released calls for sort of organizers and that kind of stuff, we realized quite quickly that there wasn't really anyone that was interested in taking on the major responsibility.
After evaluating the circumstances, they decided to change their minds. The cancellation of the IS was a well thought out decision after the board of the NC had the sober realization that it wasn't worth sacrificing everything for. Ever since, the organization has continued to improve year after year, event after event. Their current structure results from the hard work of multiple generations of UIPers that have shaped UIP Sweden into what it is today. The evolution is noticeable. But here we are. In 2019, UIP Sweden held their 15th national session in the city of Malmö. Organizationally speaking, these events started being thought of about 2 years ago. But what is harder to notice is that the quality of this event builds upon the significant experience gained during the already long history of UIP Sweden. So do you think there's anything you want to add that might be useful for what I told you?
I think, just a greeting to my colleagues, other teachers and people involved in schools. Embrace this. take this on, use it as much as you can. There is no other vehicle for development, personal and academic, that surpasses that of EYP that I have seen. So that would be my advice.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
That has been it. That was a beautiful interview.
Was that okay?
Yes, it was great. I really loved every single one of your...
So the national board at that time, and especially the accountant, who's in charge of the money? No, this is embarrassing.
Secretary General?
No, guys in charge of money.
Treasurer?
Treasurer, thank you. Treasurer at the time was spearheading that.